dollar strengthens against the Chinese currency, which means U.S. consumers get more for their money. So the exporting country who has to bear the cost of the tariff can offset the cost by cheapening the currency. That's just, again, very simple math. And now we're back to currency wars. I hate to sound like a book salesman, but my 2011 book, Currency Wars, goes through this in a lot of detail. Okay, so Moran gets that. And he says, we don't want that. We don't want China and Europe and but Germany really and India and the rest of the world fighting our tariffs by cheapening their currencies. We want to actually cheapen the U.S. dollar. We want a cheaper U.S. dollar. The effort to devalue the U.S. dollar is the offset to foreign countries devaluing their currencies. So where are we now? We're kind of back to the Plaza Accord. And that's why I called it, and that's why everyone today calls it the Mar-a-Lago Accord. Trump likes ornate architecture, so I mean, the Plaza Accord is at the Plaza Hotel, which Trump used to own, by the way. That was a Trump prop, but it's very, I like the Plaza. I go to the Palm Court for high tea sometimes, but it's very ornate. Well, what's more ornate than Mar-a-Lago? I mean, practically nothing, so they'll have it there. But this goes back to the Plaza Accord. Now, what Moran wants to do, he wants to have his cake and eat it. He wants to cheapen the dollar, weaken the dollar, but not lose reserve currency status. And that's, hey, if you cheapen the dollar, not think is it still the reserve currency? Well, he wants both. Has that ever been done? The answer is yes. It's been done twice. Once by Richard Nixon in 1971, and once by James Baker in 1985 at the Plaza Accord. Now, Nixon, of course, went off the gold standard. So the price of gold went up from $35 an ounce to $800 an ounce between August 71 and January 1980. That's a 2,700% increase. Another way to think of it is if you think of the dollar by weight of gold, that was a 95% devaluation of the dollar. But we did not lose our reserve currency status because of the petrodollar accord in 1974. And I had a role in that. It was my first meeting on official business in the White House. I met with Helmut Sonnenfeld, who was the deputy national security advisor. He was known as Kissinger's Kissinger. He was, Kissinger was the national security advisor. Helmut was the deputy, but everyone thought Helmut was smarter than Henry. So he was sort of the big brain. We were working on the invasion of Saudi Arabia. It was Jerry Parsky and Bill Simon. It was a good cop, bad cop routine. So Parsky and Simon were the good cops. They went to Saudi Arabia and said, if you price oil in dollars, everybody in the world is going to need dollars because they need oil, but you can take the dollars and put them at Citibank, and the Citibank will lend to South America. They'll buy our stuff, and the whole system will keep going. And it worked. But that was the carrot. The stick was invading Saudi Arabia, setting up a security perimeter around the oil fields, setting the price, pumping the oil, putting it in trust for the future Arab people, basically taking over Saudi Arabia's oil fields. So that was the team I was working on. And we leaked it to the Chicago Tribune. And anyway, that's the whole story. But it worked. Basically, Parsky did that deal along with Bill Simon. But my point is, Nixon devalues the dollar 95% measured in gold, and also against the other currencies. That was the Smithsonian Accord, a Smithsonian Agreement, they called it. But we got about a 20% devaluation against the yen, but everything went down against gold. But we preserved our reserve currency status by the petrodollar deal. Okay, so Nixon pulled it off, and Ford followed up. James Baker did the same thing in 1985. 1985 was the all-time high for the dollar, using the Fed's broad trade-weighted all-currency index. There are a zillion currency indices. That's the one I use, and the Fed maintains it. But that was the all-time high. And everyone agreed that the dollar was too strong. So Baker convened, it was France, Germany, Italy, Canada, and Japan. I might get one of the countries wrong, but 5 or 6 countries, including Switzerland, at the Plaza Hotel. And they agreed jointly to cheapen the dollar over some period of time. But they did it by manipulating the foreign exchange markets. Those central banks and finance ministries intervened in the foreign exchange markets to cheapen the dollar, and it worked. And then the Louvre Accord in 1987 was when they said, okay, done. Now we got to where we wanted to go, so now we're going to stabilize it. And you had a long period from 1987 to 2010 of currency peace. It wasn't a currency war. That was pretty good stability, good growth all during the Clinton years. Okay, so Nixon did it, Baker did it. Here comes Stephen Moran. And I haven't met him, by the way, just to be clear, but he seems really smart. His paper's really good. But I'm reminded of Lloyd Benson's comment, I knew Jack Kennedy and you're no Jack Kennedy. I mean, is Stephen Moran James Baker? That's the question. Maybe not. And he doesn't have, what Baker had was the ability, the U.S. is very, much more dominant at the time. Who are the big powers today? Well, it's China, Russia, and India, more so than Europe. And we're in a proxy war with Russia. We've declared China, number one threat. India relations are pretty good, but they're part of the BRICS. So are you going to get the same kind of cooperation from the major trading partners that James Baker did in 1985? I think that's doubtful. And Moran seems to know that. So he is coming up with he didn't use this term, but I call it the traffic light system. But he said, we're going to take all our trading partners and call them green, yellow, and red, like a traffic light. Green means you're with us, you're willing to cheapen the dollar, and you're going to get two things. You're going to get better tariff treatment, and we'll extend the nuclear umbrella, if not by treaty, just informally. We're going to protect you. You're on our team. Yellow is like, you're kind of neutral. You're not an enemy, but you're not helping us, and you're going to get reciprocal tariffs, but not much else. Red, you're the enemy. You're not helping us at all. You're an adversary. You're going to get punitive tariffs, and forget reciprocity. You're just going to get punitive tariffs, no help in anything else. And probably, at least for now, China and Russia would be in that category. And now this is where it gets back to Zoltan. It gets really interesting. The other thing he wants to do is swap treasury bills for 100-year debt. They call them century bonds. These are U.S. Treasury bonds with a 100-year maturity. And they're a little sketchy, but I think they want to do original issue discount, meaning there's no coupon. You basically pay $40 for a $100 bond. And then 100 years from now, you get your $100. So you make money. There is interest, but it comes in the form of what's called original issue discount. You just buy it for less, and then it accrues up to the level of maturity. What's the nice thing about that? No checks. You don't have to send any coupons out. So you improve your cash flow. And accountants would say you got to record the interest, yeah. But the United States government is kind of on a cash basis entity. There's no checks, no negative cash flow.